Welcome into the Benchwarmers Podcast. Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals is in the books. No Joel or Ben this afternoon, but we couldn't keep you hanging without another podcast for this week. So Manaia in alongside Adam Pormana. Good morning, Adam. Good afternoon, I should say. How are you?
Hey, good, mate. It's what we're a day or so out from Game 7, so at least I guess the biggest thing to take away from Game 7 before we even get into it, at least it was worth watching.
Game 7s are one of the most exciting things in sports, I think. The fact that you've had so much, generally the script isn't as clear-cut as it has been for this series, where the Heat came in as the 8th seed facing the number 1 seed, best record in the NBA as well, the Celtics, and won 3, rattled off 3 in a row, and it was all on. It was all over as far as, Kendrick Perkins, Bill Simmons, both big listeners of this podcast, I know. They were both saying that the Celtics had let go of the rope. Then all of a sudden they rattle off 3 on the trot. Now all of a sudden we find ourselves on a Game 6 where I genuinely didn't know what was going to happen. Now, on the Daily Agenda podcast available, where all reputable podcasts are sold, me and Mike
sold,
Lane,
you mean listen to?
No, we charge a premium for that. No, they are free. We have a weekly bonus bet to give away, as do all of the ACC's podcasts, and we went early. We usually place it on the Thursday, but we saw a bit of value in this Game 7, and that was on the Miami Heat to drop back by 10, but then to go on to win the game, which is very Miami Heat of them. That was paying $8.50, so we'd... best intentions to fill up the kitty, the ACC kitty. We've got our own bet for the Benchwarmers that we'll place at the end of this podcast as well. That one obviously didn't come in, and I think the main reason was Jason Tatum blows his ankle on the very first play, and that is probably the most common basketball injury. I've done it. I think everyone's done it. That's one of the many things that Jason Tatum and I share in common is that injury.
Well, that and just sheer
shooting touch.
Yeah, sheer natural ability, sporting wise.
Handle, rebounding ability.
Yeah. Or son?
Vision. Shared custody of his son as well. We both have that too.
It was a really harsh start to a game from someone who's been performing extremely well. And then what are the chances that the first possession of the game, he comes down the floor, he goes to Euro step, he comes and lands on Vincent's foot, and then from there on out, he's just cooked. The chances. Yeah,
it was a foregone conclusion from the get-go, and it's one of those things where if you either had a bet on the Celtics to win or if you had a bet on the Heats to drop down by 10 and then come back to win, you were gutted from the get-go. And I think a lot of people, particularly Celtics fans, and I know there are a lot of them here in New Zealand for some reason, I don't really understand why, but I reckon Celtics are one of the more widely supported NBA teams in New Zealand. But it's just a little bit deflating, isn't it? Like you really feel like if they had all of the troops, it would have been a much closer game. That was a 20-point blowout, and to be honest, that they waved the white flag. Joe Mazzulla put Luke Cornett and the Backstreet Boys in there towards the end with about 3 minutes left in the game, and I kind of feel like if it's the last game of your season, even if you're down by, it was almost 20 at that point.
Yeah, it's pretty bleak at the end.
I know, but I kind of feel like just leave your guys in there. Let them play, Now, I guess the counter to that is what happened to Derrick Rose, because his team was up by about 15 when he blew his knee out, and that was the end of his career. But
do you think that sometimes a coach like that kind of treats them like they're naughty kids? Like if you've done something bad and then you have to sit down for a bit of a timeout, I guess, for a use of a better word, and you've just got to realise what you've done. You've got to remember that from now on, you can't make that same mistake. You can't make that decision. And he is just kind of treating them like little kids.
Put them in timeout.
Yeah, essentially, because that's kind of what it feels like at the end of a game, right? When you raise a good point in a way, because what else is going to happen apart from the one-off for Derrick Rose? That's not often the case. I think... Yeah. I think maybe teams need to go and time out a lot earlier if they were, if it does drop off and you literally clear the bench just slightly earlier.
But I think in a Game 7, just leave it all out there. What are you saving those guys for? The tip-off in, another 4 months' time from now after the off-season? I understand it in a regular season game if you're like, right, this game's gone, we're playing a back-to-back, we're going to Houston tomorrow, let's just get these guys out of here. We'll come back and play again tomorrow. But when it's Game 7, it's all on the line. You don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah,
Tracy McGrady scored 13 points in 30 seconds.
Yes, and that was one of the more freakish moments of all time. But it does make me think more so that he has put them in timeout, because that's the only other explanation. I can't think of anything else why you would. Because you're right, like it is 100% different, because They're not backing up. Maybe he's trying to save them for a big weekend. You know, maybe they've got plans together as a team. You know, yeah. You know, maybe there's a get together, because I read midweek that after them going down 3-0, that they went out and played golf together.
Yeah, Topgolf.
Yeah, and Topgolf instead of watching film, which kind of makes sense, because do you really want to watch yourself get absolutely dumpstered for 3 games and continue watching that? You really need to shake things up, eh? And it wasn't a bad idea, right?
Yeah, I wonder if that's code for they actually got on the lash, because you can't tell me that they just went and enjoyed a lovely round of Topgolf there at the driving range and then came back and they were all sweet. They also lost the first half of the very next game that they played. So,
what they could have been recovering from
Topgolf,
from said lash, from
absolutely.
both.
So I think, why not? If you were down 3-0, why not just hit the absolute piss? Chances are you're going to lose anyway, and they did. So why not just hit the lash and then see how you go, see where the cards fall after that? Because what you had been trying in the first 3 weeks, our first 3 games, didn't work either. I think for me, one of the massive takeaways from this game was Jaylen Brown sucked. And it was a lot to put on his shoulders.
Yeah.
But this is the kind of moment where people, step up and they go, right, next man up, and it's me. You want to talk about having these 2 dudes who are, all NBA talents. He's going to sign a massive contract in the offseason. Well, I don't know, here's your chance to show that, hey, I am 1B to Tatum's 1A. And he didn't, really.
Nah, and for them, actually, it was Derek White that stepped up. Like, he hit the putback on Game 6 in what should have been a closeout anyway, because if any basketball player team knows you need a rebound, and that was something that Miami Heat weren't doing, but at least he tried in the end of this. So his stats, Derek White, from Game 7, he was 18 points, and that is only 1 less than Brown and 4 more than Tatum.
Than an injured Tatum.
Yeah. And it was really sad to see, because you see him wanting to kind of just, get the fast break, take off, and you could just see him grimace every single time. Yeah. He blew a hose.
Yeah.
There was no hydraulic there to fix it.
No.
He was under extreme pain.
Yeah.
Because surely he would have gone back in halftime. He would have had an injection. He would have had something to try and help him on. But you look at the flip side of Game 7 as well. After their 3-0, Jimmy Butler had a bit of a shocker for 3 games. He definitely struggled. But thankfully, he came back for Game 7, 28 points in that. But I reckon one of the unsung heroes from that Miami team is Martin. Martin's got 26 points in Game 7, and he shot almost 70% from the field.
Yeah.
That is amazing. And I don't know if I saw it correctly. Is he a twin, or he has...
Cody Martin is his brother, and they both played for the Charlotte Hornets. And in 2021, I believe, this Martin, whichever one he is, Caleb, I think, he was waived. And then come 2022-2023 season, he gets picked up by the Miami Heat. Was it you telling me an interesting story that had something to do with J. Cole and Caleb Martin? I believe, was it Caleb Martin that is mates with J. Cole?
Yeah, well, I think it was, I don't know if I directly told you, but I definitely watched this reel, and what had happened is pre-season, he had called up Spoelstra and been like, hey, I've got this guy's really good, you need to check him out. And they've just gone off J. Cole's vibe, obviously, because...
I don't know how much stock the greatest coach in the NBA right now would be putting into a rapper's... And I get it, he played a season of semi-professional basketball in Rwanda or wherever he was last year. So what? I don't know that Eric Spoelstra is going to be like, oh, yo, J. Cole? Yeah, sweet. Hold on, let me give Drake a ring.
Yeah, well, because he would have had to get it past Pat Riley as well, I guess. He was really not. But it was a preseason. It was just a scrimmage. He's come in. He'd been, apparently he was one of the better guys on the floor by a landslide, and he picked up a contract. What a cool way to start a season, and then just be an absolute weapon by the time you're finishing your conference finals, going into the finals where you're probably going to get pumped anyway, but at least you look good going into it.
Well, the thing is, he's always been a good shooter, and he's tall. He's like 6'7" or 8, I think. At least he looks it out there at the moment. But he doesn't have too flashy a game. He's not out there breaking people's ankles, throwing flashy passes or anything. All he does is he shoots threes and he drives fucking hard at the rim, and that's about it. And to be honest, I don't understand why more players don't do that. Like that guy, Caleb Martin, there's not a team on the NBA right now that wouldn't be happy to have him on the floor right now with his skill set.
And it's especially just a very, very, very tidy shooter.
What I'm getting at is if I was 6'8", I think I'd be in the NBA. Because I see a lot of my game in Caleb Martin.
What, more of the driving?
driving and shooting.
Or just all round natural. But the beard, so he's got a beard. Because the reason why I realised he had a brother is because pre-game they've interviewed him, and all his brother had to say is, he may be on the court, but I've got a bigger beard. And I don't know if he was only insinuating that the beard was bigger or something else, but he was definitely, there was a bit of a size complex, and he definitely needed the nation to hear it.
I'm just wondering, back on the J. Cole thing, not to jump around too much, but he's rung Eric Spoelstra and got his mate a contract there. Like, do you reckon if I could get Scribe to give a Modi Mayor a call, that perhaps I could get onto the Breakers wider training squad?
Would it hurt you if he made that call, you go to turn up there, and they just play Scribe's song Dreaming? Would that be quite offensive?
No, that would be my highlight reel, I think, that I would send through. It'll be a mixtape of me schooling Ben Boyce, schooling Chris Key, schooling a few more dudes at the YMCA, which we're playing tonight, which I'll talk about in the finals preview very shortly. But I feel like that would work.
So but that makes sense why you've been keeping these things in the hurt locker for some time, just in case this moment comes up, an opportunity arises, and you find yourself with an opportunity.
I'm putting a mixtape together.
Like what, cheeky 7-day, 10-day contract you'd take?
I reckon. So do you reckon that if Jason Tatum stuck around, that the Celtics would have won this game?
I find it very hard to believe that they would have got out of that curse of no one coming back from 3-0. So I did get reminded by a mate this week that they were the first team to have a chance when they were playing at home. Every other team who's been in this position has been away.
Right.
So there was a slight variation, but after so many games, I do find it hard to believe. I do think that it could have been a lot more competitive.
Yeah.
And that fourth quarter would have been tighter. But I just had a feeling, that the Game 7 is a game where you need the dog in you.
Yeah.
You need that mental strength. You need that toughness. And I think that is the thing that an 8 seed, not any 8 seed, but Miami is an 8 seed, an underdog, just appears for, right? They're there for it.
I said that too. At the start of that series, if you had told me, at the start of that series, I thought it was going to be 5 or 6 games the Celtics would wipe the floor with them. But if you had told me at the start of that series it's going to go to a Game 7, who do you think is going to win the Game 7? I would have said the Heat, because they're a Game 7 playoffs team. That's exactly how they play. When it all breaks down, they just find a way to score, and they score ugly. Jimmy Butler did it at the end of Game 6, and then, unfortunately a little bit of a one-sided affair. But now they limp through the finals from Game 7 into the first game of what will be a very challenging series in the NBA Finals against the Denver Nuggets. We're heating up the Nuggets, like we said we were going to, from about Game 2 of the Eastern Conference Finals. Home court advantage for Game 1, which will be on Friday, I believe at about 12:30 New Zealand time, Friday lunch beers time. That is tremendous. What are your thoughts on this matchup, Adam? Do you think that the Heat are about to run into a buzzsaw because the Denver Nuggets have had their feet up for about a week?
I don't even think the rest time would have mattered so much, because this Denver team looks like the real deal, eh? Like, I don't think there's too many teams that, it's even say if Celtics got past Miami in this, I still don't think they beat them. This Denver team is so good. They're not really, they may appear to some as a one-trick pony, but you've got the likes of Jamal Murray, who's just been on an absolute tear in these past few games. Like, I think we're all chatting in our group chat and saying, like, he was at 30 points at the half in like one of the final games, and it honestly looks like he's playing a video game. Yeah, like you would hope that your career player in 2K was half as good as him, because he is on. And then you've just got Joker, who, watching the end of the Lakers series, I saw one of the most bizarre 3-point shots where he's gone over AD and he's thrown it like a soccer throw-in, and it just looks so easy, and he just didn't even look phased, and AD's just turned around and given him like the what am I supposed to do kind of thing.
Well, what are you supposed to do? He's just dribbled around aimlessly for like 23 seconds and then tomahawked the shit straight into the rim.
Yeah, but he still makes it look easy for a guy that I feel like when he walks, like say if he was just walking normally, he looks less coordinated than he does when he's on the basketball court, which is extremely hard for most people to get it that other way around. Yeah, but man, he looks good. What do you think? And I just think that Denver are the goods, man. This is their time, right?
So one of the biggest things that the Heat did was they played zone, and they played a lot of zone. And for whatever reason, the NBA is this league full of people who just they want to, like, they're so afraid, NBA players more than any other athletes, of not looking cool. They don't want to look dorky at all. That's why Shaquille O'Neal should have been shooting free throws underhanded. There's so many players in the NBA. Ben Simmons is another one. Anyone who shoots under like 70% might as well just do the old granny shot underhand, but they don't want to, despite the fact that it would clearly up their percentages. They don't want to because they don't want to look goofy. That's why NBA teams don't want to play zone, because they feel like zone looks goofy. But anyone that grew up playing social basketball on a Wednesday at the Waimate Stadium in the depths of winter where there was fucking frost on the court when you walked in and had to mop it off before you could start a shearing stage at one end and a concrete wall at the other, everyone would break their arms. Anyone who grew up playing basketball that way knows if you play zone defense, it's so much less running and you can hide all of your worst players on defense. That's what the Miami Heat were doing. What we do in our social league that I'm playing in tonight is all 5 of us are shit defenders, so we try and hide all of us by playing in 2-3 zone, which is exactly what the Miami Heat were doing against the Celtics. Now, the way to break that kind of zone is exactly how Denver are set up. You need a big man at the top of the key, so he's behind the front 2 defenders. You throw the ball into him, the center has to come up, and then you've got cutters running baseline. Now, the way the Miami Heat set them, to getting a bit X's and O's here, but the way they set up their zone, where they have their slowest defenders back on the wings, they're going to have to, it's going to be Duncan Robinson trying to stop Michael Porter Jr. or Aaron Gordon from running in for a lob dunk. So it's going to be, this couldn't be a worse setup for the Miami Heat. The problem is the only reason that the Miami Heat ran that zone defense was because it was working. What's to say that they're not going to figure out another way of playing defense that's not zone, or it's a different zone that could also work, you know? Just because the zone that they played against the Celtics won't work doesn't mean that they're going to play that exact same style against the Nuggets. And I'm getting a little bit off into the weeds on that one, but the counter to that is, this is exactly what everybody said about the Heat up when they were up against the Bucks. It's exactly what we just said about them against the Celtics, and I just don't know what they're going to bring.
Well, I think what they're going to bring is a very, very, very clever coach, because that's what it obviously is at that point, right? You have a bit of a mastermind of reading the game and just making changes on the fly, and I think that's some of the cooler things that you get to watch in a NBA Finals. The fact that there's 7 games, you have the opportunity to face the team multiple nights, and it's really, really interesting to watch, whether it be defensive changes or just the way that they end up constructing their team on the floor, or making things like that. And Spoelstra is a very, very, very smart man. So I think if there is anyone who did have a chance at pulling that off, it really, really could be him.
Yeah, one example of what you're just talking about there, and I don't know if he came up with this, Spoelstra, or if this is a Jimmy Butler thing himself, but I feel like it was a Spoelstra thing. For the entire playoffs, and in fact his whole career, Jimmy Butler's whole thing is he'll get into the lane because he's stronger than you, up fake like 6 times, and then shoot. And on one of those up fakes, you're going to jump. Now, clearly going into a Game 7, the strategy for the Celtics, if you're defending Jimmy Butler and it looks like he's about to shoot, don't fucking jump. Don't bite on the fake. And the counter to that was Spoelstra told Jimmy, or Jimmy figured it out himself, just don't pump fake, just shoot it. They're not going to jump. They're not even going to contest it because they're going to think that you're faking it. And so the adjustment, like you're just talking about, was, well, instead of faking it, just shoot it straight away.
Yeah, well, they've essentially faked the fake right there.
Yeah, it's a double bluff.
Yeah, that is amazing. That's some real 5-head play there. But it kind of makes sense though. Like it's those things that you hope that you'll get to see, or that people will figure out over these periods. And it'll be interesting to see how. Well, Miami are 100% underdogs, right? The majority of the year they've been saying, like all these undrafted players, and Jimmy's come out and said, no, they aren't undrafted. They're my teammates and stuff. Yeah. And he's a real good sort for that. But it really does make you wonder, some years I feel like it's just a team's year. And I think finally for once, because Denver had a couple of really rough seasons with Murray out and that as well, that like finally all the pieces have aligned and they have a really good shot. And, just back to your point earlier about how they play, especially with Joker, most centers can't pass the ball no look like Joker can.
Yeah.
And at the same time, he can make any shot from anywhere, including a deep three that just looks so silky. Like you have the ability of all the moving parts around him, and you have this freakishly athletic guy that looks none of the above. Just making it look easy, like it's really going to be something quite cool to watch, I'd imagine. I hope it goes past 4 games.
I think it will. I think it's going to be 5 or 6. Unfortunately, I do think, despite wanting the Heat to win more than anything, because I feel like that changes Jimmy Butler's, changes his life, changes his legacy, changes the way people think about him, because people don't really think about him during the regular season at all. People talk about Tatum, people talk about Brown. Obviously, people are talking about Jokic as well. No one talks about Jimmy Butler because nothing he does ends up on the highlight reel. You won't see him on TikTok, doing an alley-oop or hitting a deep three or anything like that. It's deflections, steals, hard-nosed defense, and that kind of shit.
I do think that with that, though, he couldn't, because of his natural style, he couldn't have landed in a better side. I think the Heat, in a way, Butler, I think the Heat essentially are the team made for him.
Yeah.
They're hard-nosed, they're all about working, and they've always been like that to a big degree. Obviously it's a bit different when they had Wade and Shaq and obviously LeBron in that, but they've always been a hard-working side, and especially under Spoelstra as well. So they did extremely well to get him after he told his old teammates that they were rubbish after spanking them with the B-side and stuff like that. And then, he just brought that forward. And, I don't know if you saw that. So when he was handed out the the conference final trophy, do you see that he wouldn't take it?
Yeah, I'll take the next one, Eric.
Yeah, so he was giving us those Kobe vibes there, eh? When Kobe was going on, job's not done.
Yeah, or Michael Jordan, which is obviously famously his father, allegedly. So one last point on this thing as well is something that I think doesn't get talked about with this team is Denver's always had this massive home court advantage where, because they're a mile in the air, it's a genuine thing where it's a lower oxygen volume in the air there. So teams find it harder to play there. And I think I talked about this on the last podcast, but back when they had those teams with, Carmelo Anthony, and then even with Iguodala and that in the mid-2000s, where they would just try and run you off the floor because after about 10 minutes, you're going to be gasping for air, breathing through a straw. I think that's what happened to the Lakers. At a certain point, LeBron's 38 years old and he's going to be wheezing. The Heat are actually quite old as well. They've got some ancient dudes out there. They're going to have to play Kevin Love at some point because they've got no other centers. Jimmy Butler's no spring chicken, but he is very, very fit.
Interesting fact about Kevin Love that I found before we came in here.
Yeah.
Every time he's gone, he's made the playoffs, he's made the finals. He's 5 from 5.
Wow.
Which is, considering he's been in and out of form and all that as well, it's not bad, eh?
No, if he wasn't white, people would be comparing him to Jordan, I think. But my point is, I don't think that. So the Denver home field advantage is a real thing. I don't think that's going to come into play here because I feel like Miami, part of their hard-nosed heat culture thing is they do their famous skin folds tests at the start of every year. So every player has to be in ridiculous shape. I think that's part of why they have so many undrafted players who play really well, is because if you're an undrafted player and you're out of shape, you suck. If you're an undrafted player, the only chance that you have to play well is to be in phenomenal shape, which they are. So, I don't know. They get a couple of days here. Is that enough to recharge? The first game's in Denver. I don't know. I guess we'll find out. But I guess that brings us on to our bet for game 1. Actually, before we get to that, I just said my prediction for the series. I think it's 5 or 6 games and the Nuggets eventually run away with it. Your thoughts?
Nah, put an actual number on it.
I'm going to say 6.
6?
I'm going to say 6. Yeah, I'm sticking with it.
Okay, I'm going to go on 5.
Okay. To the Heat?
Yeah. Well, the worst part about this is a few weeks ago, the Pants man, Joel Harrison, was adamant. He was telling me each day, Heat are going to win the whole thing. We've actually got a bet on Jimmy Butler Finals MVP, which is in the TAB account for the ACC as well.
What was that paying?
It was only around $4. I don't know if it was worth it at that point, but when you looked at Jokic and that, he was paying under 2, well under 2.
$1.50 or something.
Yeah, which is a waste of time. So
it'll be a lot shorter now.
Yeah, I'm definitely going Denver in 5, but we have hedged our bets, at least money-wise, to make sure that if there is the upset, the only person that's usually going to win, because it's usually the head guy that wins the MVP anyway.
Yeah.
At the very least, we should be getting a bit of money back for the ACC crowd.
Yeah. So on that, our game day good punt this week from the TAB, we've got a $100 bonus bet, all thanks to them who put on something. We are going to get on the Heat to win game 1, and that is based purely on vibe, and the vibe is that they've won the first game of every series so far in this playoffs. They, I think that there's something going back a couple of years where they win more road game 1s than any other team. it's one of those anomalies that could just be a complete fluke, but it's the kind of thing that they do. You know, it's very heat to just come out and smack you in the mouth and win game one before you can figure out what's going on. So we're putting $100 on that. You can follow that along responsibly if you want to, and enjoy game one on Friday, 12:30, and we'll be back next week, won't we? Wednesdays?
Hopefully next week we'll be back on Tuesday. We'll be back into schedule, but at the moment we're definitely looking to release this after we get a bit more info after it, and that's why this week it made sense for us to come out after all was said and done, because we're not one of those podcasts that's going to come out here and add speculation to everything and tell you our in-depth knowledge on everything, unlike... Oh, actually, I take that back, Manaia. You gave us a lot of in-depth knowledge on the zone defense and a very, very specific scenario.
I just wish the listeners could see the whiteboard I've got with me.
Oh, hey, there's 100% lots of X's and O's. So we'll be back next week, and hopefully the Pants Man and Ben Boyce will be back, and hopefully the first few games will be exciting.
All right, we'll see you then.